Well, good day and welcome. Our event today is a webinar jointly organized by the Standing Committee for Gender Equality in Science, the SCGES, and the International Science Council, ISC, and it also celebrates the Global Women's Breakfast. My name is Carol Woodward, and I'm the chair of the SCGES. SCGES is an independent committee formed in 2020 by 9 international scientific organizations. These founding partners had worked together on the ISC's supported project, A Global Approach to the Gender Gap in Mathematical Computing and Natural Sciences, How to Measure It, How to Reduce It, which became known as the Gender Gap in Science Project. Today, SCGES has 25 partners, most of which are ISC International Union members, and they represent millions of scientists brought together across disciplines to promote gender equality in science. The aim of SCGES is to ensure liaison amongst international scientific unions to foster gender equality and the implementation of recommendations of the Gender Gap in Science Project, especially in the scientific communities that the scientific unions represent. SCGES actively cooperates with policymakers and international organizations, first and foremost ISC, for the promotion of gender equality in science. This event marks the 12th webinar in the SCGES webinar series, featuring various topics related to gender equality in the sciences. While many of these webinars are organized by one or two of our unions, today's webinar is organized jointly by the ISC and SCGES and reflects the work done by Leah Nakash and Marie-Françoise Roy as part of the Women Scientists Around the World Strategies for Gender Equality interview project. Our event today is held as part of the 2025 International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry Global Women's Breakfast or GWB. The theme for this year's event is Accelerating Equality in Science. In conjunction with the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, the purpose of the GWB is to establish and empower a global network to overcome barriers to gender equality in science. The Global Breakfast is an event that happens on a single day in February of each year, and the aim is to celebrate the accomplishments of women in science and to inspire younger generations to pursue careers in science. Women and men from all types of science organizations come together to share breakfast, either virtually or in person. Groups from all types of science organizations, from high schools to science societies, universities, companies, governments, and non-governmental organizations are invited to participate. Event leaders are encouraged to collaborate with organizations in different sectors and to include scientists from multiple disciplines. In 2025, the Global Women's Breakfast is an official event for the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology celebration. Breakfast events start early morning in New Zealand and Australia and then progress with time zones around the globe, finishing in the Pacific region, usually in Hawaii. Each event is independently organized and represented by a heart on our global map. As the first breakfast begins, the map pins of active events change to color, and you get to see a wave of red hearts moving around the globe. Social media channels become full of inspiring posts from events happening around the world. From 2023, the Standing Committee for Gender Equality in Science has supported the Global Women's Breakfast through its webinar series. In 2023, we produced the hybrid seminar, How to Evaluate and Reduce the Gender Gap in Science. In 2024, we produced the hybrid webinar, Popularizing Science Without Gender Bias. And today, we have the webinar, Women Scientists Around the World, Strategies for Gender Equality. Before I turn this over to Leah to introduce today's webinar and speakers, let me say a few words about all of you, the audience. According to our count made this weekend, we've had more than 400 persons who have registered through SCGES, or more than 228 persons who have registered through SCGES to attend the present webinar, and they live on 6 continents. About 1/3 is in Europe, with Asia, North and South America, Australia, Africa also represented. As we found at previous webinars, around 75% of the registered audience is composed of women. About 15% are men, with about 10% preferring not to state their gender. And we note that we've had more than 470 people register for this meeting, through this webinar, whether it be through the SCGES, where we had the demographics by discipline, or through the ISC. As regards disciplines, it's good to see that audience is quite multidisciplinary, with mathematics, chemistry, and biology being the most represented. And last but not least, all career stages are represented among you, which confirms that gender equality is of interest and of importance to all career stages. So now I'll turn this over to Leah, who will introduce our webinar and our speakers.
Thank you, Carol. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Leah Nakash, Communications Officer and Coordinator of the Gender Equality in Scientific Organization project at the International Science Council. As Carol stated, we're so delighted to welcome so many today to our discussion. And today's discussion is a joint initiative between the International Science Council and the Standing Committee for Gender Equality in Science. We're organizing it in celebration of International Day of Women and Girls in Science tomorrow. And as Carol presented, it's also part of the Global Women's Breakfast Initiative organized by IUPAC. So today's discussion builds on a pilot series we had the pleasure to conduct with the SCGES to explore the underrepresentation of women in scientific organizations. Through qualitative interviews with 10 women scientists from diverse discipline and region, we examined the systemic and individual factors shaping their experience as women scientists. The pilot led to a publication of a blog series that is available in the chat. I shared the link. And the series featured portraits of women scientists from the interviews, including today's speakers. So today we're honored to be joined by 4 speakers, 4 women scientists. Catherine Gémy, Director of Research at the French National Center for Scientific Research and co-founder and inaugural chair of the SCGES. Monica Moraes, Researcher Director at the Institute of Ecology, Major University of St. Andrés, and former President of the National Academy of Science of Bolivia. Marie-Françoise Ouedraogo, Assistant Professor at the Department of Mathematics of the University of Ouagadougou, and first woman of Burkina Faso to earn a PhD in mathematics. And finally, NCR Fanny, researcher at the Perimeter Institute in Canada, co-founder of the International Community of Iranian Academics. I'll be now giving the floor to our first speaker, Catherine Gémy. And just a reminder that during the discussion, we encourage you to participate by writing your question and your thoughts in the chat. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the speakers' sessions, and we'll address as many questions as possible. Thank you for joining us, and go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. So I hope you can all see my slides. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. It was really nice to see all these little message of greetings from countries all over the world in the chat during the introduction. So I will just be talking about my own experience of working for gender equality in science. So who am I and how did I come to work on gender equality in science? As Leah just mentioned, I work for the French CNRS. I was trained in mathematics and in Chinese studies, and I am a historian of science. I do my research on the circulation of knowledge between Europe and China in the 17th and 18th centuries. This means that I, amongst other things, I look at how scientific knowledge produced elsewhere can be appropriated in different parts of the world. And from this experience, I have drawn a number of, I would say, basic assumptions that inform the way I work for gender equality in science. First point, the universality of science is a construct, not a given. So that means it's really up to us, and we should never take it for granted. Secondly, the great importance of making all voices heard. And thirdly, awareness of the presence of also silent and invisible actors. Let me give you an example from my research. And this is about how we read the evidence. So this is a Chinese painting of the early 18th century. It's the portrait of a woman who belongs to the elite. As you can see, she's holding a watch in her hand, so early 18th century, even in Europe, but also in China. This is a kind of high-tech product. And on the shelf at the background, there is an armillary sphere. It's traditional when you show this image to say, oh, well, these are instruments that were at the Chinese court, were just treated as luxury items to be displayed. Nobody, they didn't understand. It's just like a pretty picture. But there is another way of reading this, which I would propose. This may well indicate that women participated in the taste for astronomy that prevailed at the imperial court. In other words, there is no reason to suppose that the person on the portrait, just because she's a woman, is not interested in what the armillary sphere has to say about, the shape of the universe. So this is, I would say, how in my profession I choose to not discard anything that's not already established as mainstream, and this is what one has to do for women. So coming to gender equality and how I'm trying to work between the local and the global, I would say many things that may be obvious. So the gender gap is not something specific to the sciences. It pervades all human societies around the world. And we know gender equality is one of UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So it's not just a matter of, being fair, but a matter of the future of humankind. And because our scientific professions are embedded in these societies, they are not free from, the constraints and structures of our societies. The gender gap in science varies in width. We don't know of any single country or place of institution that can report having done away with it once and for all. So what can we as scientists do about the gender gap in science? Locally, we can act in the institution where we work, in the classroom where we teach. We can also act at home as parents and as citizens generally in the place where we live. Globally, the picture is a bit different because science is international and global, I would say, unlike many other professions that people may have. There are scientific unions and international associations, and they have been working for gender equality for years, sometimes for decades. And so the question is, can we share standards and good practices globally? And how do we do this? So not to just assume that something constructed locally is going to be good for you because it is good for me. So what we're trying to do is coordinate efforts and exchange experiences. So in working for gender equality in science, science holds a dual role. It's our profession that shapes our communities, and we try to act within this profession so as to make it inclusive. But science is also shared knowledge, and we can therefore approach the issue of gender equality with the tools that some of our disciplines provide. And I've given a few examples: biology, statistics, data science, psychology, sociology, political sciences. But there are others. Give us tools to better understand how the gender gap comes to be and how it is maintained and how we can reduce it. For example, what I have learned from the history of science is that there have always been women in science. So the issue is one of visibility. They have been made invisible in history, just as women in general, and just as in today's society. Secondly, I have also learned that the role that science has played in the past in the naturalization of the gender gap is not always a positive one. There were medical theories in the late 19th and 20th century explaining that women's bodies were not made for intellectual effort, and if they were going to exert themselves too much in that field, then it would damage the body, especially their reproductive organs, which is, of course, the ones that were deemed the most important and defining of women at the time. So science also has a history, and it's not always been on the side of gender equality. That is because even in doing science, we have to get rid of our biases. But I believe that as scientists, we are well placed to use the tools provided by science today to implement good practices inside our professions. And as you have understood for my own work, so I work, I would say, across borders and also across disciplines, because what I do does involve knowing quite a bit of math and also astronomy, as well as history and other disciplines of humanities. So taking on board the diversity of situations, depending on both countries and disciplines, is something essential. For example, at international conferences, we may think that we have done what we need to do if the conference organizers provide rooms for baby feeding as well as childcare so that young mothers can come with their babies. But we must ask, who has authority to decide whether a woman can attend? Is it herself? Is it her boss? Or is it her husband? And in some countries, it is her husband. So it means that what we can do from, the global point of view is not sufficient to really ensure equal access of women and men to conferences. And working across borders and disciplines is not about the so-called global north supposedly leading the way. It is about ensuring that best practices are defined, taking into account the diversity of situations. In other words, I may know from my experience where I work what works to promote gender equality, but unless you all who are listening to me from different parts of the world can say, no, well, where I work, this doesn't function at all, but this is what we do, then one is not going to achieve much globally unless we actually put our experience together and take them all into account as we work. Another example I have here is a conversation I had a few years ago with a Romanian colleague, and she explained to me that one of the issues for gender equality in Romania was retirement age. Women retire earlier than men in scientific disciplines as well as in more hard labor professions, and this meant that women never worked for long enough to reach top professions. So, and this is maybe not something that would have occurred to me as someone who works in a country where the retirement age is the same for both genders. So, as Carol has mentioned briefly, this is also what has been my experience. I first started working on gender equality by taking part in the joint project of several unions that was led by mathematicians and chemists, and it was funded by the International Science Council. And here you see a booklet that, a proper book that we produced at the end of our project, and I recommend that you download and read, because it has quite a good number of data. It presents the result of a global survey with 32,000 answers that we did as part of the project, and also investigations on patterns of publication, the gender gap in scientific publication. That's quite something important. And when the project came to an end, we had developed very valuable interdisciplinary and international networks. And it was in order to perpetuate these networks that we created the Standing Committee for Gender Equality in Science, which brings together not countries, not individuals, but scientific unions. So what have we done so far in the SCGES? This is not an exhaustive list, besides the fact that there are now 25 of us together. But we have worked together, for example, in issuing a statement in 2020, that is during the pandemic, with recommendations as to what should be done to avoid widening the gender gap in science because of the pandemic. So there were issues like extending the contrast of academics who are in temporary positions, and also taking into account the burdens of increased caregiving and of preparing online teaching. the recommendations made to academic institutions and to funding agency was also made to journals that to take into account the caregiving burden. There was also the recommendation of adjusting the fees, take into account those participants who had lost income due to the pandemic. And so as you can see also, and I think it's important, the recommendations here are phrased in terms of caregiving burdens, etc. So they are not, this is not, you know, simply based on whether you're biologically a man or a woman, but it's more about the social role of women. After the pandemic, we continue to work together, and we have cooperated in writing codes of conduct for our respective unions, because this is something that all organizations need, and where we can fruitfully bring you know, joint forces rather than repeat the same work several times. We also collect data from each discipline. The data regards the representation of women within science organization, but they also concern congresses, how many women are registered, how many women chair sessions, are invited speakers, how women also prizes, how many women there are among the prize winners. And this exchange of information and good practices has led my union, so historians and philosophers of science, to appoint a gender and diversity champion following the policy of the physicists union. So this is, I would say, very practically how working together makes us more effective. And finally, working together has brought the standing committee itself to participating in the Global Women's Breakfast, which had been initiated by the chemist, as Carol has mentioned earlier. And in closing, I would like to invite all of you to go to the IUPAC Global Women's Breakfast website to see whether there's an event that you can attend tomorrow where you are. And if there is no event, I encourage you to liaise with them so as to create one next year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine, for this very insightful presentation. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to Monica Moraes, with Research Director at the Institute of Ecology, Major University of St. Andrés, and was the former president of the National Academy of Science of Bolivia. Please go ahead, Monica.
Thank you very much, Leah. I am very glad to be here, thanks to International Science Council, in order to share part of my life in terms of gender equality. I belong to the Academia Nacional de Ciencias de Bolivia and the Universidad Mayor de San Andrés in Bolivia. And now I would like to dedicate this presentation to Dr. Anneke Lebelt-Sengers. She passed away last year. She was a physical scientist from the Netherlands, and she was based also for a long time in the USA. She also she also belonged to the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America. And really, she was a passionate advocate for women in science. In 2007, she proposed the creation of the Women for Science program at the Inter-American Network of Academies of Science. We have always this short name as IANAS, but now you know that this IANAS is really a very interesting and important network in this continent. And this program is still in force. you know, as focal points, we have met every year in different countries. And from the beginning, she captivated us with her commitment, dedication, and permanent academies. She was always smiling, like this picture is showing. And she was trying always to make discussions and plans for, to strengthen our participation in the academies of science about gender issues, but also to involve more women scientists in our countries. So my talk is going to have 3 parts. The first one, I will show you that I have not faced an environment of gender discrimination along my professional performance. I had no doubt that this was an impediment. The second one is dealing about, only once I have suspected that it was a factor that delayed my admission to the Bolivian Academy of Sciences. This has become more clear to me over the last few years in relation to know how the academy works. And the third one, well, I have picked some strategies that were implemented to achieve inclusive conditions. But it was really fundamental to target groups of women scientists and to make them working in the academy. But it's really a never-ending task, and it's always a very nice thing to do every day. Well, maybe it's good to show some data from science in Bolivia. I know it's not that updated as I wish to show you all, but in 2011, we have this total of 2,500 researchers in Bolivia, and only 45% were women. But I cannot say this only, you know, it's very approaching the total number for for men researchers. And these 45% are represented in the natural sciences. You can show here blue for men and red for women. And now you see that is quite well distributed, but really in this knowledge area, it's centered a higher quantity. And well, biology is always something that is showing the largest number. We have tried 7 years after this big movement that came from the government in Bolivia, and it showed that biology has 60% with a background in science, and the others were distributed in very lower numbers. Another point is that for more than 30 years, only 2 women scientists were part of the Bolivian Academy as full academicians. And the first woman that was invited as a full member joined in 1965, which is 5 years after the academy was created. And then 36 years later, the second female scientist was appointed. So you can see that it was truly made this academy of men, you know? Then actually, since 2028, the number of active women academicians totals 10 out of a total of 32 academicians. And this has increased over the last 12 years. So we are improving these statistics. The majority of these women are in the natural sciences, 3 biochemists, 2 biologists, 2 agronomists, 1 chemist, 1 psychologist, and 1 medical geneticist. 3 women academics make up of the Third World Academy of Sciences, and only one to the Latin American Academy of Science. Now you have more or less a shape of how things are going in my country. If I can show you about my professional performance as a biologist, I think that throughout my wonderful life, that when I built up my biology appealing for having this career for my life, I was able to carry out various activities related to botanical research. Numerous fieldworks were carried out, especially in areas of the Bolivian Amazon, which I like the most, and it forms more or less 55% of the whole country. So it's not that Andean that many others are thinking about Bolivia. But also I was looking for understand the shape and composition of the vegetation and landscapes and species, in particular of native palms. But I have never felt any gender discrimination along these activities. And I was able to establish contact with colleagues and scientists, not only in Bolivia, but internationally. And on one hand, we were trying always to organize working groups. And on the other hand, we were trying to develop joint projects. I did my undergraduate studies at the Universidad Mayor de San Andrés in Bolivia, and then my master's degree and PhD degree at the University of Aarhus in Denmark. But I did not suffer any gender discrimination during that time. And I think one of the most precious gifts of the university was the opportunity to mentor almost 70 undergraduate and master's students, mostly women, during my life. I have now 35 years working at the university, and I really have enjoyed this relationship. Supervising young researchers is one of the most important satisfactions, because you can sharpen your skills in passing lessons and motivate them to keep growing. And still, I did not have any problems on gender discrimination. Finally, as an indicator of my work, I have published 85 scientific articles in index journals, 21 books, 76 books, chapters, among others. At the beginning, I recognize that my publications were individual, but then I was part of plenty co-authors groups that generate fascinating experiences with different specialists and contributing in the final versions. So you can see that in some way I'm sure that many of the experience you have carried out as a scientist, you have probably had more or less the same experiences. Starting with the second part of this talk, I would like to talk about my admission to the Academy of Sciences. It started in 2002, and it was thanks to Dr. Armando Cardoso. He was a full academician at the Academy, and he was an agronomist and proposed my name for membership of the Bolivian National Academy of Sciences. You know, at that time, I was not that familiar with the Academy's admission procedures. I was not aware of how long my application had been delayed. It is possible that for that purpose, I have updated my curriculum vitae twice. And then I was invited to join in May 2008 with the topic, yeah, you can read that. I was very interested in trying to gather all the information about history and evolutionary landscapes that are influencing to, and maybe all those processes can explain the wonderful richness and current distribution of native palms in Bolivia. So yeah, I really enjoyed this gate into the academy. And a few years later, I gained really a better understanding of the procedures and conditions under which one joins a world-class Academy of Science, because it's not only the characteristics or the features of the Bolivian Academy. Many academies are sharing more or less the same procedures. When I see back and I check my participation in the Academy of Sciences, I can, for one side, highlight my I really feel very grateful to the presidency of that time of the Academy of Sciences. It was led by Dr. Gonzalo Taboada, and thanks to this, to his support, I really can carry out many of my plans, my planning to contribute to our academy. For example, I got the chance to be the focal point in the Women for Science program since 2009. And, you know, it was a golden opportunity to learn the realities of many other women's groups in other IANS countries. For example, experiences were always shared in any exchange of messages or in any meeting we have had. And in some way, the academies manifested some change and going ahead. You know, it was improving some conditions. We were always discussing about some troubles that some groups of women or of scientists they were facing at their universities or other academies. The conditions of sorority in some task forces also inspired everyone about the mechanisms of solidarity, support, and growth of the group that was maintained for years. So we got to be friends too. Another step that has brought good satisfactions and also to improve the environment in the academy was to create this gender commission. It started in 2010, and although the role of a gender commission may be more general, it is very important that its composition be achieved between men and women. This commission submits reports on activities, and the Academy plenary endorses its operation. Generally, assume that the task of supporting with specific some rules or regulations and selection criteria, so that the Marie Curie Award, I will talk later of this slide, which was enforced during the same period. And this group of people will proceed to evaluation of applications for the annual recognition of Bolivian women scientists. In 2023, it was proposed to establish this commission as a reference point at the institutional level on gender equality within the group of full academicians. It was also urged to address institutional definitions to prevent any type of discrimination. You know that any moment, yeah, rises some problems to solve. But also, this commission should be a group, the same task force should discuss about any violence based on gender. Well, this national prize was created since 2012, and it was awarded for Bolivian women scientists, which was called Marie Curie 20. It started that this award was given every year, and it was really supported by the National Academy of Sciences. And you know, we started in 2012, and it continued about 8 years. And the call was challenging the institutional postulation, perhaps at the beginning very shy, 2 to 6 female researchers per year. But due to the pandemic in 2020, it was not launched, but it was resumed in 2021, in which 20 Bolivian women scientists postulated. So we were like gaining success, a successful experience. The evaluation work has the basis for this award, and it is in charge of the Gender Commission that I have referred before. And this award is still in force. And although the delivery of a certificate and a plaque, like the one you see in the picture, does not imply an economic value, it has already been registered as an opportunity to recognize the trajectory of Bolivian women scientists. And I really think that it's not a concession. It's not something that you give as a gift. No, it is a right and compliance with demanding and competitive criteria in relation to indicators of intellectual production. I will just show 3 of the winners that were given this award. Esther Flores, Dr. Esther Flores, she was a biochemist, and she thinks that after 20 years of work, this award is a stimulus for the work being done. It implies that the effort made and the time invested to develop each research has been valued. Carla Fernandez, Dr. Carla Fernandez, she is a biologist from Cochabamba, and she thinks that I hope that more Bolivian women scientists will be encouraged to apply, showcase their work, and make science in Bolivia more visible. And Dr. Helga Fruberg, an environmental engineer from Cochabamba, she pointed out, winning this award helped me to believe in myself and to strengthen my work as a researcher, so I motivated other scientists to have these awards. Well, since May 2021 to 24, a new administration term of 3 years of the Academy began, in which for the first time a woman scientist has assumed the position of a president. By representing the Academy, all the structural details were known internally, thus contrasting the characteristics before and after on how an institution that represents the science of a country works. This connotation was an open book for me to recognize the institutional political will to generate dynamics to adapt and modernize the statute and specific regulations, but also to gradually generate work cohesion to unite the environment as an academy, and a positive thinking, and always a progress based in consensus. It was created, a new award for Bolivian institutions and researchers, and it was also during my term at the presidency, and it's called Science in Bolivia, Ciencia en Bolivia in Spanish, with 5 categories. You can see them, and by now 2 cycles of these awards have been already made to 9 research institutes for their contributions to science in Bolivia. And finally, it's not the least important, but new academicians also were involved in the academy, and we took the advantage to improve many rules to admit new scientists in the academy. For one side, we have one category, which is the full academicians. We admitted 11 new scientists, and 4 of them were women. But it was really necessary to adjust the regulations for the admissions of new scientists based on international bibliometric indicators of science and technology, as well as the functioning of an admissions commission that was highly efficient. And the second category belongs to the corresponding academicians. We are inviting Bolivian scientists that are abroad in various areas of knowledge, and they were invited to the academy. 11 academics were included too, 6 of them women who are living in the USA, Germany, Netherlands, Chile, Poland, and Oman, and 5 men in the USA, Brazil, and Canada. Well, I think that rather than noting discrimination, I think it's better, and you have to make more effort to address the safety and performance of women scientists, starting with oneself, then individualizing, making this more powerful, and passing the word to groups. And this will strengthen not only the spirit, but of being part of networks between people, motivating self-confidence and security to continue to grow. It is a daily task, and it's, I promise, a very rewarding in every way. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Monica, for this presentation. Thank you for sharing so openly about your experience and highlighting the people who have supported you and gave you confidence. Participants in the chat are emphasizing how crucial role model and supporters are in shaping a career path. And your tribute to your mentor, Dr. Levelt, was especially powerful. And incidentally, a participant mentioned in the chat that they knew Dr. Levelt, that they're part of their in-law family, and they shared that they knew they had to leave our own country to access to the same professional opportunity as men. So really important to build this network and to build each other confidence, as you highlighted. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Marie-Françoise Ouedraogo for the next presentation. Marie-Françoise is assistant professor at the Department of Mathematics of the University of Ouagadougou, and she was also the first woman to earn a PhD in mathematics in Burkina Faso. Please go ahead, Marie-Françoise.
Thank you, Leila. Hello to everyone. I am very glad to be here with you to discuss and exchange about how to reduce the gender gap in mathematics. My talk will be divided in 3 parts. First, I will share my experience as mathematician in Burkina Faso with you. And after that, I will talk about the situation of African women mathematicians and some action we set up to reduce the gender gap in mathematics. So my name is Marie-Françoise Ouedraogo. I am a full professor in mathematics. My institution is Université Joseph Kizerbo, the former Université de Ouagadougou. My country is Burkina Faso, and my domains of interest is pseudo-differential operators. And I have another position. I am the president of the African Women in Mathematics Association. So I did my high school at Lycée Philippe Zenda Kabore in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. In the final years of my high school, we were 19 students, and I was the only one girl in the classroom. And during my studies, I was encouraged by my mathematics teachers, my family, and also some friends. For university, I did a first cycle thèse de troisième cycle in French at Université de Ouagadougou. And after that, I did a PhD at Université Blaise Pascal Clermont-Ferrand in France. And I was recruited as assistant and assistant professor, lecturer, and now full professor at Université Joseph Kizerbo. Some funny things. At the beginning of my career, something happened. When I arrived in the classroom, the student thought that I am one of the pair. Maybe because I am a woman, and maybe for other things. When I took the chalk and started writing at the blackboard, they realized that I am the professor. And then they paid attention and followed the course. Also, even now, it happens that a student called me sir instead of madam. And when this guy realized his mistake, he can apologize by saying that it is the first time he has a female mathematics teacher. Some obstacles I faced: socio-cultural obstacle. Girls and women are encouraged to take up short studies that enable them to get married, raise children, and take care of their family. Also, the intolerance of some of my peers who could not cope with the fact that a girl could compete in the field they consider is best. For example, in the final year of my high school, we had presentation to do in French class. There was one of my classmates who told me, I am going to read your part of work to come and ask you a question in order to corner you. And I told him, go ahead, I am waiting for you. Also, the skepticism of some professors, of colleagues, which force you to work harder in order to prove that you deserve the right to be there where you are and as much as any other person does. Also, the drastic lack of role model of African women mathematicians, to which one can refer to encourage oneself to go on. The first woman in science I knew was Marie Curie. But Marie Curie is a famous scientist, but Marie Curie is not a mathematician. She works in physics and chemistry. And when in undergraduate classes, I studied Fatou's lemma in integration theory, I thought, finally, I met a woman mathematician. But Fatou is not a woman. His name is Pierre Fatou. It is a French mathematician. Now, some statistics at my university. Université de Ouagadougou, now Université Joseph Kizerbo, was founded in 1974. It is the first public university in Burkina Faso, and it is also the big one. Since 1974, we had 13 presidents of this university, and only one woman as a president. Now, we have more than 45,000 of students, and between them, 33% are girls. At the Department of Mathematics, for the last 3 years, as you can see, 0 women defended a PhD in mathematics, I mean. So now about the situation of African women mathematicians. This situation is very diverse and not very well documented. There are no exhaustive statistics of female mathematicians in Africa. Here are some of the classical problems that have contributed to the scarcity and also underperformance of women in mathematics in some regions of Africa. I already talked about the first one, the cultural and traditional bias. There is still a strong bias in such developing countries and a belief that mathematics and art sciences are only for men, and you see it everywhere in implicit or explicit ways. Poverty and human trafficking. Many girls in the developing countries have stopped going to school because of poverty and human trafficking. Lack of role model and senior women in mathematical sciences. Historically, girls and women have not had the same access to education as their male counterparts have enjoyed in Africa. Also, the lack of government policy and strategy to promote mathematics and increase access for all genders. Now, my first action to the African women mathematician began in 2009. I began to be interested in the gender gap in mathematics when I attended the Pan-African Conference of Mathematicians, and I was appointed as chair of the Commission for Women in Mathematics of the African Mathematical Union. In 2010, I started to contact some African women mathematicians to initiate a mailing list and to set up activities as conferences, workshops, and also how to think about introduce role model to help young girls in mathematics. In 2011, I attended a meeting of the European Women in Mathematics invited by Marie-Françoise Roy, and there I got advice on ways to find the funding to organize an international workshop in Ouagadougou. We did so in 2012, the workshop on African women mathematicians in Ouagadougou. During this workshop, many women asked to form an association to be able to define their criteria, their status, their internal regulation as they want, instead of being a commission of an organization that has its own rules. So in 1913, we create AWOMA, the association, the African Women in Mathematics Association. The location, it was in Cape Town during the second African Women in Mathematics workshop. The main purpose of AWOMA is the promotion of women in mathematics in Africa and the promotion of mathematics among young girls and women in Africa. Other objective, to encourage African women to take up and continue their study in mathematics, to support African women with or desiring careers in research in mathematics or mathematics-related fields, to provide a meeting place for these women. So this is some activities we already did inside AWOMA, the organization of workshop in the 5 regions of Africa. The first one was in Ouagadougou in West Africa. The second one in Cape Town in South Africa. And after that, we did one in East Africa, North Africa, and also Central Africa. The organization of regional meetings. We created a website. You can see the address with the financial support of CWM. But I have to say that the link is not working now because we are in the process to update the WhatsApp. We also created a database of women mathematicians and a booklet of role models from all Africa. During the times of COVID-19, we created monthly webinars, and now we are organizing a workshop of women in SCGES Day. We already did it in Senegal for the first time, also in Nigeria, in Uganda, in Burundi, and soon this year in Tunisia. I have to say that AOMA activities are not strictly for women, while the role of women is systematically highlighted. During a workshop, we try to organize a roundtable to talk about the situation of a women mathematician in the region or in the country. Also in the workshop, the majority of lecturers are women. We are trying to attain this objective. But among the participants, we take both men and women. Following the foundation of AOMA, some regional associations have been created in some countries, like in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Tunisia, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Senegal, in Cameroon, in Morocco, and also we have 2 associations in Côte d'Ivoire. As action, we have a participation of AOMA in international committees and projects, like IME Committee for Women in Mathematics, CWM, the only global organization for women in mathematics. CWM facilitates contact between organizations for women mathematicians. A member of AOMA is involved in this committee since its founding in 1915. Also, we participate in the Gender Gap Project in science, a global approach to the gender gap in mathematical science, computing, and natural science, how to measure it, how to reduce it. It is a multidisciplinarity and multicultural project funded by the International Science Council and led by IME, IMU, and IUPAC. Also, we participate in the May 12 initiative, voted by WM Square attendees after a proposal from the Women's Committee of the Iranian Mathematical Society. I recall that May 12 is the birth date of Mariam Mirzakhani, the first woman who won the field medal in mathematics. As conclusion, let me say that besides the problem cited above and other difficulties, we arrive to attract women working sometimes alone in the institution to gather and to work together. Also, the creation of AOMA highlighted the African women mathematicians at the level of similar organization in the world. Nevertheless, a lot of work remains to be done in order to reduce the gender gap in mathematics in Africa and to motivate young girls and women to choose mathematics and studies for studies and career. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Marie-Françoise, for sharing your initiative to support women mathematicians in Africa and for highlighting the lack of representation and data on women in the field. Participants in the chat are showing actually what an example the African Women in the Mathematics Association is for them and how they're trying to replicate this initiative in their own country. And now for our last speaker, it's my pleasure to welcome NTA Erfani, who is a researcher at the Perimeter Institute of Canada and the co-founder of the International Community of Iranian Academics. She will tell us more about the situation in her home country, Iran. Please go ahead, Ansia.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Ansia Erfani, and as Leo mentioned, I'm going to talk about gender apartheid in Iran and its effect on science. Now, I'm a researcher, and I'm at Perimeter Institute in Canada, and my background is in cosmology, and also I'm the co-founder of the International Community of the Iranian Academics that I will let you know about that more. So I will just introduce a little bit about my country, Iran, and give you an overview of what's going on there, and explain about the gender apartheid, what does that mean, and what's the difference of the gender apartheid and gender discrimination, and why it matters in science in general, and how we can act to really somehow reducing the effects of the gender apartheid on women that they're facing that in some countries like Iran and Afghanistan. So just giving a brief introduction about Iran, you know that it was based in the Middle East. It is the 17th country in the size and also in the kind of the population. So the population of the country is 89 million people. So half of them are females. So you see that if I'm going to talk about gender apartheid, how many female are going to be affected by that. And you know that you see the map, and also we are surrounded in different countries, and we are the only non-Arab speaking countries in the Middle East. Talking about gender apartheid in Iran is a bit complicated because first I should define what's the meaning of gender in Iran. When I'm saying gender in Iran means just female and male. Even talking about LGBTQ+ is completely forbidden issue. If you declare that you are one of these groups, there will be a big punishment, even sometimes death. So it is completely illegal issue to be in the category of the LGBTQ. So when I'm talking about gender apartheid, I'm just talking about the systematic discrimination that happens and based only on females. So what I mean by gender apartheid and what is its difference between gender discrimination? When you talk about gender apartheid, it means a systematic segregation operations based on gender. So you have a system that force you to really be segregated because of your gender. And you have also legal and social discrimination. When I'm talking about legal one, we will come back to that. Maybe I can just summarize all of my talk in just two statistics, which is not based on the studies that I have done in Iran, but with a foreign organization, because in Iran, you cannot do such kind of studies at all. But this organization, they did these statistics, and it shows that in the Gender Equality Index, Iran is the 115th country among 191 that they participate in this survey. And regarding the Global Gender Gap Index, we are almost in the end of the list. We are 143 out of 146 countries. So then you can imagine that how is the situation there. I mean, we don't really want to continue. So what the question is that how they really do such kind of the gender discrimination systematically, and how we can see its effects on the life of the female in Iran in general, and also its effect on science, that I will let you know a little bit in a few times how I can really open that situation for you. It starts at the age of 6, and I will let you know how from the time of the school. But what is wondering, maybe also you experience it when you talk with the female Iranian scientists, especially, you see that over 60% of the university students in Iran are female. And you wonder that if there is a gender discrimination, which is systematic one, how it could be that 60% of the university students are female. And how is the case? Even in the STEM subjects that women are really underrepresented, it is not the case in Iran. I will let you know why this is the case with all these barriers and discriminations that we have. And gender apartheid, of course, caused the females to not being able to study in specific fields in universities. I will let you know how the system do that. And female employment, you hear that over 60% of the students are females, and you're wondering that, of course, in the case of the employment, the number of the females also should be higher, which is not the case. So the unemployment rate among the university females that they have a university degree is more than 50%. So it means that you just invest too much more time and also budget for training these females, but that then they don't have a time to find their career. So more than 50% of them that they're educated in an even higher level of the PhD as well, they don't have job. So legal barriers to work in the male-dominated STEM subject, which is maybe something common, but in Iran it happens systematically, and I will let you know how. And one of the main issues that maybe you heard about that more and you are aware of that after the Women Life Freedom movement in Iran in 2022 is the mandatory hijab rules that I will let you know how that affects all the time after the revolution in Iran in 1979. Let me just start with how the situation of the female in Iran has changed. We had the revolution in Iran, which was the religious revolution, Islamic revolution, happened in 1979. This picture shows the University of Tehran, which is the first established university of Iran in 1934. And you see the females that they go to the university, they graduate, and they don't have any problem. So without mandatory hijab. And of course, because Islam is one of the religion in Iran, you see on the university, this is the picture from the literature department of the Tehran University. And you see the females even with scarf, but it was not mandatory. So you really were free to choose your dressing code before the Islam, before the revolution in 1979. Maybe also you can also wonder if I show you that those days, the female Iranian PhDs of also were in the nuclear energy studies in scientists in Iran. So this picture shows them, and this is the article in one of the newspapers mentioning that a quarter of Iran's nuclear energy scientists are women. And the date is coming back to 1968 when the reactor of the Tehran University has been established. So imagine that how Iran is really advanced in having the female in really sciences and topics that they were really, even now they're male dominated in several countries. So what happened in the country in 1979? I just wanted to review how the rules, systematic rules, changed the rights of the females to access what they had before the revolution in 1979. So before the revolution, women had a right for the education, which is the case right now. But I'm just talking about these things. If you marry, if you not be a single woman, then all the permits that you see here will be in the hand of your husband. And I'm also telling husband because in Iran, having a relation out of marriage is completely forbidden, and it says a really high punishment. So you can have a partner, but you should be completely hidden. But if you are married, and officially you are engaged and you are married, the permit for education, your work, for your travel, for your even divorce, having your children if you divorce, and having the passport to be able to leave the country, and even having the permit to doing surgery, even in a really critical situation, is in the hands of your husband. So you see how systematically, as a person who is married, how your life will be in hand of your husband. And as I said, because out of the marriage, it's not really possible. So your partner cannot go and ask for these kind of rights, which is completely systematic discrimination that the governments do. So it's really a difficult situation because traditionally, women in Iran married soon. And of course, imagine that in that age, you will not be able to continue your education. You do not have the permits of work, even traveling. And also, if you wanted to divorce, it was not possible, and your husband should allow you to make the divorce. And even if you wanted to leave the country, you couldn't apply for a passport if you are married. Before marriage, it's possible. So imagine how that can affect your life as a scientist to do that you want to travel and you don't have a passport to do that because maybe your husband, because of some reason, doesn't allow you to do it. So even if you want to go to the labor tribunal, if your husband don't sign the official documents, you cannot do that. So that's how I'm saying the permit of doing the surgery is in hand of your husband as well. So that's really discrimination that we didn't have before 1979. So you can imagine how the situation of the women in Iran has changed. So how the system established that to Iranian women, that you see that before the revolution, they were really educated, they were in the public, in the society, they were really active ones. How they make this systematic discrimination in Iran? Of course, it starts from school. According to the rules of Islam, in some countries, not in all of them, the women should wear hijab to cover their hairs and also their body completely at the age of 9. As I said, which is not the case in other Islamic countries as well. But in Iran, they started at the age of 7 because schools start at the age of 7. And although with the rules of the Islam that they say that you should not wear hijab and you should not have a specific dress code, but they force you at the age of 7 to wear that. And this picture is really colorful. I try to really find a colorful one to see that, the girls, wearing the really, let's say, happy colors and this one, but this is not the case at all. You see the teacher, how she's dressed in really black one, and also more than hijab, he's also having the veil as well. So it starts at the age of 7. So this means that if you don't wear hijab, you cannot go to school. So even your parents, they don't have right to say that, sorry, I don't want my girl to wear that hijab because it's not possible. And even in the private schools that you pay for that, it's not allowed. So it's everything's governed by the rules of the country. So you cannot do it. So imagine that how it starts. It starts from school. At the age of 7, you should wear hijab. And the point is that in Iran, even the kindergartens are separated. So females, girls and boys, they go to different schools. And you see that how from childhood, you really separate from the society, and how that affects your career, your life also in future, because till the age of 18, if you have a chance to go to the university, that there is no separation. You never experience to really playing or working or doing a teamwork with boys in your society. So it means that how you are really, let's say, detached from the society. It should be a really normal society. I wanted to show you, this is the reality that it seems to happen in the schools of Iran. But the reality is that especially after the Women Life Freedom, it was on the whiteboard here, it was written in Persian, Women Life Freedom. And these are the school girls that after the Women Life Freedom movement in 2022, we saw many pictures like this, that they are removing their hijab and they're taking the pictures like that. And of course, because they know that they will be arrested or they will be followed up, they don't show their faces. And these pictures now is really common that the girls do such kind of pictures in their own classes. So this is the reality, but you see that they are not colorful colors. The girls are forced to wear really dark colors as well. You see the brown, the really dark blue or black clothes. So the reality is not as happy as this one. So it starts from school. They force you to wear it, and you never question that because it is something mandatory. And I just wanted to let you know, because of the movement of the school girls, the regime made the chemical attacks on school girls during the Women Life Freedom movement in 2022 and 2023. Nobody really knows that, who was responsible for these chemical attacks. They said that we arrested few, but they never get the trial. So more than hundreds of the schoolgirls all around the country, they had the chemical attacks. Nobody really knows that what happened. So many of these girls have been hospitalized. We don't even have the statistics if any of them have been killed. And even in this picture, you see that the mother of one of these girls has been arrested really harshly because they wanted to know that what was happening in the school. So you see even the dress code of these girls, they're really black and black colors. So that was how the regime's trying to somehow mentioning to the schoolgirls that you don't have a right to remove your hijab and you should obey the rules of the society. So how that can affect that in the science? I will tell you more about hijab also and its effects on science. But of course, it will limit your access to education because in the rural countries, especially because of the rules of the country, that the age of the marriage is 15. So many of girls are forced to marriage in the really early ages. So that will be avoid you for education. And restriction of opportunities in key scientific fields. In some of the subjects, they are really male dominated, especially in engineering subjects. So you are not allowed to pass this, to go to these subjects. The point is that in Iran, you have a exam to enter to the universities. So that's why the females can participate equally in this entrance exam to go to the universities. And maybe that's the only reason why females can go to the university and they can have the more than 60% of the seats of the university, because this is the exam that they cannot make the discrimination. But of course, in some subjects, you cannot choose after get accepted in these subjects. So you cannot choose these subjects to continue as your career in future. So that's why the number of the female universities is more or less equal to the number of the male students, because they have a chance to go to university equally because of the exam, because they really work hard to really enter to the university. Because as I told you, this is one of the paths that you can find your way after the school to go to the society. So this is the only reason. But of course, the regime never tried to help the females to go to university, but that's why you study hard and you get the high level in the exam, and then you go to the universities. And of course, when you go further, when you go to the master level and PhD level, the number of the female students drops too much. And of course, in the faculty level, it's terrible because we have just 10% of the female in Iran faculty level are females. And of course, in STEAM subjects, it's much less. But in medicine, maybe, or literature, these subjects is a bit higher. But of course, we never reach 30%, which is the goal of the many countries to reach it. So there are barriers for professional developments and advancement. I will let you know how they do it also in the time of the hiring for females as well. And of course, the academy and all the places are male-dominated case. So this means that this is a discrimination systematically there because all the committees for your hiring and for your evaluation are male-dominated, and you know that how that can affect their decision if you are a female. And of course, all these systematic issues cause to brain drain. And Maria-Françoise also mentioned about Mariam Mirza Khani, that unfortunately she passed away at the age of 40 because of cancer, and she was the first field medalist prize, and we are really proud of her. But she was one of the really talented Iranian females that she left country after her bachelor doing the studies in the US. Let me tell you about hijab, that how it affects the life of the Iranians all the time, because at the age of 7, you are forced to do it, and it's with you till end of your life, and you will not be able to have the right for education, for work, and everything if you don't do it. And all the time, the regime saying that hijab is part of the culture of the Iranians, is not related to the Islam. But of course, the ancient, things shows that this was not the case. You see here, for example, the silver cup shows an Iranian female without having a hijab, maybe just ordinary hat or whatever that it was common those days to use it, but they never covered their hairs. And also this mosaic of the Iranian women from one of the emperors of Iran, you see that they don't have a hijab. So it was really clear that having hijab is not part of the Iranian Persian culture, Iranian culture. It's just enforced after the country become Islamic country, but of course it was not mandatory to wearing the hijab. Let me show you a great picture. This is the picture before the revolution, a few years before the revolution. And this picture has been taken in one of the most religious countries of Iran, that they call it the Vatican of Iran. The name of the city is Qom. And you see the females, that 2 of them are wearing hijab completely in a really extreme form. And the other females, they don't wear hijab, and they are living together really, really freely. So this is the picture of the Iran before the revolution, that the ones that they want to have hijab, they were free to do it. And the ones they didn't have, they were also free to do that. So even in a religious country like Vatican of Iran. But what happened after the revolution? Of course, the mandatory hijab rules started from not exactly from the beginning, but the regime tries to avoid some activities regarding the females. For example, in 8 March of 1979, when the revolution happened, females wanted to go to the protest because they were heard about the mandatory hijab rules that they would be implemented in the workplaces. They would force the females, if you don't wear hijab, you will not be able to continue your job. If you don't wear hijab, you will not be able to go to university and to the school. So the protest started, and you see that here, the discussion, the debate of one of the Iranian females with one of these clerics, that they wanted to impose mandatory hijab in that rally that females have done. But after this one, in 1979, 8 March, the regime even forbid having the 8 March as international day for women in Iran. So it's forbidden to have a celebration in that specific day. So this is one of the systematic discrimination we also have. So okay, you said that is that one the only protest? Of course not. There were many protests happened in Iran. One of them was in 1999, and this is the gate of the Tehran University that I told you that is the oldest university in Iran, and you see that the chaotic happening there. In that protest, more than 7 students have been killed. The regime never accepted these statistics. More than 300 students have been arrested. And one of these students that disappeared and nobody knows that what happened to her, we don't even have its picture after all these years, was Fereshteh Alizadeh. She was a student at Al Zahra University, and she disappeared from that time, and nobody knows what happened to her. And of course, we had also had the other movements. The Green Movement happened in 2009. That was against the cheating in the election result, presidential election results in Iran. And one of the famous ones has been killed in these protests was Nedal Agha Sultan, that her killing time was the most viewed one in social media those days. But one of the really great things that happened in Iran was in 2017 that the girl called Vida Mowahed, she standed up without compulsory hijab, hanging her scarf against the hijab. Of course, she was being arrested and sentenced to the prison, but that was the first movement the Iranian females do it in public after the revolution, saying that we are against the mandatory hijab. But the main step was in 2022 when the death of Mahsa Jina Hapini happened in the custody of the police because of the hijab rules. And this is her picture just few hours before her arrest in the metro of Tehran. And you see that the dress code is really great, but they arrested her because of this dressing code. And she passed away a few days later in a hospital, and the big movements happened in Iran, later called Women Life Freedom one. And of course, the universities also were involved in these protests. And one of the harsh attacks happened in the Sharif University, which is one of the universities of the elites in Iran, in 2nd October. And many students have been arrested at that time. And they call it the bloody day of the protests in the University of Iran. And you hear that the protests continued for several months in Iran as well. And in these protests, I also resigned from my faculty position in solidarity with my female, and that's why I'm living in exile right now. And one of the really turning points in the history of Iran was in November 2024. Here you see a picture of Ahu Daryai, a university student, that she wanted to pass to the university with the dress code that it was not acceptable by the guards, that they are in the entrance of any university, because in Iran, if you go to the university, there are walls and doors and entrances that you should pass it. And there are also security checks there. They check you, your dress code and your hijab and all this stuff. And these people, they wanted to attack her, saying that, okay, your hijab is not well and you are not allowed to enter the university. And in protest, she removed all of her clothes. This is a really turning point in the history of the country, that you see more or less a naked woman in the street. And nobody can do anything because it was the first time that happened. Everybody really shocked. And after that, the regime said that she had a psychological problem, and she hospitalized in a psychological hospital. And from that time, we don't have any information what happened to her. Nobody really knows what happened. So you see how the systematic discrimination affects your lives. Seeing something like this picture in Iran is completely, let's say, for me, it's like the revolutionary picture. So how the system do that? In Iran, in general, the university is also affected by the revolution. In almost 1 year after, 1.5 years after the revolution, they made the cultural revolution. They mentioned that the university should be closed because we want to Islamize, we want to make the universities according to the rules of Islam. So they closed the universities for 3 years. And of course, that affects also the female students. In these 3 years, they've also forced that later on, the female, if they want to go to the university, they should wear hijab. Otherwise, they were not allowed to do that. There were attacks in many, many universities those days. We don't have the right statistics, but it shows that more than 30 students have been killed in that time, and 7,000 faculty members have been fired. This number is more or less half of the faculty members of Iran that they get fired that time because of their religious or because of their political orientations or even because of dressing codes. We cannot even imagine that even for male in Iran, wearing a tie is not allowed because they see it as something Western issue. So if you wear a tie in your workplace, you will be fired. So imagine that how this dressing code also affects the life of the males also as well. For example, wearing jeans as a faculty member is not allowed to do that. It was not written somewhere, but you know that if you wear it, that will affect your evaluation process, which I'll tell you more. And we know that more than 20,000 students have been expelled from the university. Many of them, they went to the prison because they were in the political groups that after the revolution, the regime didn't accept them. So they lost their right for education. And many of them, they never get chance to come back to the university after this cultural revolution. Right now, the statistics of Iran shows that we have 2,300,000 students and we have 86,000 faculty members. and how this cultural revolution works. Even after 46 years, this cultural revolution still exists. We have a Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution, and this guy, who is one of the clerics, is also the head of this organization right now, and they rule all the rules of the universities and higher education in Iran. How they do it, I just wanted to tell you that how... Yeah.
So
I will summarize. I just wanted to
speaking for nearly 23 minutes. So if you can summarize, thank you.
Sure. And I just wanted to let you that how these guys is extreme. He's as extreme that even saying that going to cinema is not allowed to Iran. How they do it in Iran, of course, with different committees, that if you want, I can tell you more. But one of the things is that when you evaluate you as a faculty member, they evaluate you scientifically and also ideologically and politically. So you should be oriented with the ideology of the government. So operations happens. I don't want to go to this one regarding the harassment that happens systematically in Iran, and also how we can act to support Iranian females by doing the advocacy regarding their situation, making awareness about them, and making more collaboration about regarding these issues and advocating for gender equality. And because of all these discriminations, in 2022, after the movement of women life freedom, we made the international community of Iranian academics to be the voice of the Iranian academics in general. And you can find our reports and everything in this website. And I really hope that we really understand that the gender discrimination in some countries is really systematic, that we call it gender apartheid. I told you some of them that is happening in Iran. And I hope that we don't exclude females in general, because if we exclude, we will lose. And if we include, we will grow. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antia, for opening all of our eyes on the situation in Iran and sharing the hard lesson of systematic segregation and how it affects all areas of societies, including education and science. We're done with our speaker session, and we're now entering the Q&A. So there's been several questions that were asked during the each sessions in the chat, and I've gathered them in several groups. So you can still ask questions. I've been monitoring, and I will try to ask them in a way that makes sense. So there's been several people who shared their own initiative or what they've been doing in their own country. Several are members of networks for women scientists. For example, we have a participant from Ecuador, Maria Herminia, who says she has been organizing events with university professors, researchers, staff, and women. She's carried out events, but she failed to implement empowerment strategies. And she's asking if we have recommendation. And similarly, several participants have asked, reacting to Monica's presentation, if we have any tips from the panel on how to find mentors and supporters for women in science. So I'll open to the floor now. Who wants to react first? So participants were asking for empowerment strategy at the institutional level because they have their own network, national network, and participants are asking for tips to find mentors and supporters as women in science. Yes, Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very good comment and question in both. Maybe I can start saying, of course, there is a macho man environment in Bolivia. I have showed you that I have chosen to first strengthen my own personality, my own skilled profession that I have chosen for my life. But I think we have to be collectively. We have to start doing things as a group, checking and following up all those syndromes, all those patterns that are blocking women since many, starting like being as a child. So, the roles of women in the society, at least in Latin America, in many countries in Latin America, the society is assigning roles to women as housekeeper, you know, and this is something that it's not only hidden, but it's like written in the skin. So we will be I think we will going to have more impact if we fit together, if we work together. Therefore, every strategy, perhaps at the beginning, is not going to make any impact when we start. We have not to lose the enthusiasm, the compromise that we have already taken. I think it's something that has to go further, but we have to keep an eye in monitoring those patterns that are arising. Something very different is what is happening in Iran. I think it's very, very tough to start with, because it's something that it's politically based, and many systems, the whole society is going through this way. But I think the key issue here is to work together as a group. And we have to build up some paths, some steps that can show maybe a very low impact at the beginning, but then it take forces. I think that's the way how it works better. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Indeed, there are several reactions saying that women have to step up from themselves and help each other, not wait for somebody else to help them. And concretely, what tips would you give to some women who have difficulty finding this mentor, finding this supporter? Do you have any tips to find somebody, to reach out to people who could help you, to other women scientists who could help you as a woman trying to have a career in science?
I think each of us has to be a mentor. We have to have this task involved in our lives. But I don't know if there is an organization that is like having a list of people that is willing to be mentor. Mentorship is not that easy. I think it's easy when I'm at the university and I am helping my students. I think it's a good it's something that I can reach, but something at the level of international, or I think it's a bit difficult. I don't know if there are some examples.
Maybe I would have a suggestion for us sitting here, the ISC. The ISC brings together international unions, but also national academies. And maybe we are talking about something that national academies could coordinate, like a website where, you know, young women students could find who are the mentors at their university or in their cities or in their profession locally. And this is talking about, of course, countries where national academies of science have taken on board the issues we are talking about. So it's, again, not universally valid, but I think it's probably true in sufficiently many many countries, you know, where we have to look at the national level, how to coordinate things so that eventually students or young women will find somebody who is accessible to them locally. I think this is a very important question, and we should at ISC in particular think about how we encourage that. Initiatives have to be at the national and local level, but it must be possible at the international level to stimulate this kind of initiatives.
Thank you, Catherine, most definitely. We're taking notes, and if there's anything we can help coordinate from the ISC level, that's something we'll gladly do. We'll be communicating on the afterward of this webinar to all of you participants. So we're taking notes of your suggestion, and I agree with Catherine that international platform here have a role to play. We have, so in the same vein of question about women having to organize themselves, several women have highlighted in the chat have highlighted the dual burden that weigh on women to have to do not only their work, their family, and it's even a triple burden of work, family, and then being a role model, being a mentor, setting up association to help other women in the field. People are asking what can be done to relieve the pressure a little bit.
So here again, I think there are recommendations, and that they have to be then implemented at the national level about how you assess a researcher. If we are going to continue counting quantitatively how many papers somebody has published in, say, between their 25 and 40, any person who has had a role of caregiver within a family, and that's most of the time women, will lose at that game. So I think that there are now new recommendations for how to assess people, not quantitatively. So don't tell me how many papers you have published, but for example, select the 5 most significant papers you have published and explain why they are important and significant. I think that, again, here, international and national institutions have a role to play in recommending such modes of assessment, and when people go in for promotion, that quantitative evaluation is not a good idea. And I also think that we know more generally that quantitative assessments are not particularly good for the quality of science, because the point is not to publish many papers, but as we know, but to publish innovative and good papers.
Thank you, Catherine, for this response. And in the same sense, somebody has asked, because it plays at the national level, what recommendation and best practice are put into practice. And they're asking what would be the best science policy practices to monitor, not only to leverage, but to monitor the progress and the diversity in science. How can we keep going at the goal? If somebody wants to answer that one.
May I jump in?
Yes, go ahead, Ansia.
Yeah, actually, sometimes I just wonder that the people, they wanted to really accelerate the situation of the female in science in general, and they're supposing that maybe we can fill all these, barriers by having some accelerated programs, and then trying to fulfill what we were behind the history for centuries. And they try to find the talented girls in the schools or even the STEM subjects, which from my point of view, which is not the right way to do it, because we should make the opportunity for all the females available. Doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter if they are talented or not in that subject, because one of the things in the case of the STEM is that you should have, of course, somehow, intelligence to go to the STEM subject, but this is not the case. This is just few percent of the issue. You should also be able to really resilient in this subject. Doesn't matter you're a male or female. So this means that you should have a really good background to really keep females that they are interested in STEM subjects in this subject for a long time. So if we are just choosing for the ones that they are interested, let's say in physics or mathematics, maybe in future, their career will not, their past will not be in a way supportive, and they will lose their, support, and they will just decouple, even if they are really talented to do that. So from my point of view, the accelerated projects that some countries really thinking of that, how, for example, increase the number of the Nobel laureates, females, from my point of view, it's not possible, because we cannot accelerate this process. We should give the same opportunity for all females all around the country, all around the nation. And of course, from these pool, really talented ones, the ones that you're interested in, will be really show up, and they will become the stars in that subject. So it's not the case that there is no shortcut to increase the number of the females in any discipline. We should really be patient, and of course having the long-term projects, not really looking at short-term. Okay, in 5 years we want to increase the number of the females from that one to that one. That's not going to be doable. We really need to have a long-term projects, of course, with the short-term vision to see that how we can reach these long-term visions. Otherwise, we will be really failed, as we failed in the, for example, in the case of the gender equality issues in the SDG programs, that we see that many countries, even the developed ones, they could not reach the gender equality in the case of the education for female even in developed countries, which is much more difficult in the developed societies too, because their programs looks like the shortcuts that they put too much budget for something that's not going to be possible to do it.
Thank you, Nsia. Indeed, there's no shortcut, and as Monica was saying earlier, it's something that has to come from the grassroots, that people have to carry initiative and not be discouraged if they don't immediately see the impact of their action. So I see that some participants are sharing their own initiatives. Some people are mentioning that they are offering mentorship opportunity in their own chapter. I see in particular mention of the Organization of Women in Science for the Developing World, known as OST, which is an IAC partner. They have national chapter in 57 countries, if I'm not mistaken, and they provide this type of like networking, this support networking. So I would encourage reaching out. I will paste the contacts and the details of those in the chat shortly. Just before, I see there are several comments addressed to NCA, asking, notably Michel Spiro, asking what can be done to help women in Iran very concretely, and he's asking from IUPAP.
Yeah, I already replied to Michelle. Thanks a lot for this question. The first is that we should be aware what's going on in Iran, because as I told you, when from outside, it seems that the situation of the female in Iran is good, because you see even in the STEM subject, the number of the females is more or less 50-50. And nobody really can understand that how it can happen. As I told you, because of the entrance exam in the universities, females knows that the only way that they can really have a success in their life and find a path in the society is by education. That's why they really go to the universities. They work really hard, especially in the STEM subject, because you know that male also is not really interested to this subject because of the career issues in future. So it's really even complicated even for male to be resilient in these subjects. So that's why if you see the number of the female students in STEM subjects in Iran is higher, it's because the males are less interested to these subjects, and there is more chance for females to go to these subjects in the universities by the entrance exam. But of course, the systematic discrimination shows its effect in the higher levels when you go to the master and also to PhD level, and more seriously in the faculty position, because all the committees are male dominated. And of course, as I told you, in Iran, we have evaluation for the females that is also scientific and also regarding to your political and also ideological background. So if they realize that you are not living in hijab or all these rules anymore, so then even though you are scientifically, you are really perfect, you will be excluded from having this job. So systematically they do it later, but in the bachelor level, it's not really easy to avoid it, because there is an exam and you have a chance to go. As I told you, in some subjects, you cannot choose these subjects later on. So first, you should be really aware there is this discrimination in Iran, and this is a systematic one. And we should not say that, okay, sorry, I see many female Iranian girls all around the world and they do the same subject, so how it could be. The statistics does not show the reality. This is the case that I'm sharing with you. So after understanding what is going on, of course, we should do the advocacy. We should be aware that they are really facing such kind of issues, trying to help them to find a position abroad, to understand their situation, that their situation was really complicated. Even for some female Iranian students, it's really even difficult to communicate with male students, because they never experienced that, because they were completely separated from boys till the age of 18 before going to the university. So imagine that how it's really difficult for you, even if you go to the foreign country, to adopt with all these things. It's the first experience for you. So all these cultural background imposed by the regime also affects your life. Making advocacy, trying to facilitate the fellowships and also giving them more chance, defining some specific fellowships for Iranian females. And of course, they are really talented to find their path. One of the main issues that Iranians in general facing these days is the visa process. Even if you are really talented and you find a position in any country, it's really, really difficult to get visa to accept that position. For me, for example, my new position that I started just a week ago, it took 8 months to receive the visa. So imagine that how it could be the life of a person waiting for a visa as a student for 8 months, or maybe more than even a year, to be able to find the situation, and of course not being able to do it also in your country. So helping them to defining some fellowships, understanding their situations as well, that they are coming really from harsh condition, and maybe they are not really know many normal and ordinary things because they never trained for that, they never learned these kind of things. And of course, at the end, also trying to facilitate the visa process if it's possible for that. Thank you.
Thank you, NCA, for these very concrete ways to help. I see more comments in the chat highlighting how participants within their own networks and association were inspired by other examples. They cited the African Association of Women Mathematicians. They cited the International Mathematical Unions. And I think it goes back to what Monica had presented, the importance of sharing best practices among different institutions and networks. She quickly cited the example of INS, which is the Inter-American Network of Science Academies, where presidents meet and share best practices. So definitely, I think there's a role to be played at the international level to coordinate all these networks, to coordinate all the initiatives that exist, to gather resources and make them widely accessible. So I think we've addressed most of the question, apart from going back to what we discussed at the beginning on the burden weighing on women to have to play different roles and advocate for themselves. A participant was sharing that she's a young mother and she found it really difficult and she struggled to actually attend conferences in foreign countries, so to participate in international opportunities now that she's a mother. Does anyone want to share their own experience about that? I recall we had an ISC event just last week in Oman, and I recall seeing two young scientists with their own child attending the conference. Is this something that should be developed more, for example, to ease the burden on women? Who wants to share their experience from the panel?
Me.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think when we have a child, the priority has moved directly to focus our life to this new child. I have had one child, and I have had to resign to many fieldworks and also conferences and projects and many others, because I found out that it is so important. The child in this small, when he is so small, we have to focus our effort for raising him as many as until now. But I started taking care of him even in my office sometimes, and you don't feel disappointed. You have given your child the best of you, and you have like having a time of not doing other things as a professional, but as a mom. And when you give this care to another person, it's not the same. You are the mom, you are the mother. So I think that's the best priority I can, or the best advice I can give for you. And I'm happy to have done this way. Really, thank you.
May I comment too on this?
Of course.
I think the issue is not only there. The question is, what support do you get as a young mother? Do you, as I mentioned, more often than not, a young mother will have a partner who's a young father. And leaving aside the real issue of breastfeeding, there's a lot the young father can do. I have seen young mothers attending conferences, not only with their babies, but with the father who was carrying the baby around while the mother was at a session. So this costs money, admittedly. But what I mean is that the idea that a woman has to choose, and she has to choose to be a mother rather than a scientist, I don't completely agree with. I think it is not inherently impossible to do both. It's just a matter of your environment. And so what can we do as representative of institutions? It costs money, of course, to travel not only with your child, but also with the father or somebody else who's going to look after the child. So it has a cost, but it is not a fatality that if you have a young child, you'll have to give up conferences. I myself traveled to a conference from Paris to Singapore when I had a 6-week-old baby. The baby stayed at home. My parents looked after it. And when I came back, the baby was in excellent health. And she went on to study mathematics herself. So I don't think she was too shocked by, traumatized by the treatment I gave her there. So it can be parents, it can be the partner, it should be our societies. I mean, there are countries with childcare institutions. It should be the workplace also, right? Who at least give us the choice. We may choose to not go to conferences, but the issue is now young women, young mothers do not have the choice.
Thank you, Catherine. Indeed, it goes back to what a lot of participants were highlighting, this feeling of being burdened to have to do it all and to have to do it all alone, to have to find mentors for yourself, to really be an individual charged with everything when we know the issues are very much systemic. So the system should also, institutions should also provide the opportunities and the support.
The reality is very different between societies, especially if they are from the first world and have better conditions. It's the same as we were talking about mentorship. If we center a window at the ISC, it's going to be an international level, and it's skilled, it has plenty conditions. So we have to focus that every country or every region has different realities. And it's not always like, for example, maternity, they got the husband and the wife. In South America, it doesn't happen this way.
But thank you for highlighting, Monica, that indeed the situation is not the same everywhere. Some countries do not benefit from the same leave, parental leave. Some countries do not have paternity leave. Looking at you, the USA, I think. So it's true. It's true. It's not the same for everybody, and we should. And it's why the national level is also very important, because they know locally what's best. Also, local women know what's best for their own society. So it's 5 right on the dot. I think we're done for today. Thank you all for joining. We've been over 200 participants joining this discussion. So that's a wrap for today. I've pasted some useful links in the chat of resources that were mentioned during this discussion, and we might be done, but the International Day is tomorrow, and there's many more celebrations taking place around the world. We've talked about the IUPAC Global Women Breakfast. There's going to be 24 hours of continued celebration, so do log in onto their website and see what's happening around you. Does any of the speaker want a last word before we close and we say goodbye to everybody?
Maybe I say something?
Yes, please
Yes.
Go ahead, Marie-Françoise.
Okay, so it's just that I think the webinar was really great. And I've also seen a lot of very interesting links and observations in the chat. So I think we should really save the chat and maybe try to edit it. Of course, we're not going to keep everything, but to try to edit it so that we keep the main content of the chat.
That's a very good suggestion.
And also, we could also suggest, of course, that remind people that, of course, it is recorded, so it's going to be available on both websites, and people who are not able to attend will be able to see it, and you can see it again. And it was really a very great event, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Marie-Françoise. Indeed, we will be saving the chat. I've pasted in the most interesting comments in the document, and we'll be contacting everybody. I think we're going to share the links to the recording, the links to the presentation, and any useful link that was mentioned during the session. Don't feel bad if you didn't catch everything that was in the chat. We're going to send all of that to you, and we took notes of your great initiative and recommendation. Thank you all for joining today, and we'll be in touch shortly.
Thank you to you, Leah.
Thank you
and
to all
Marie.
the speakers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Catherine.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
For sharing. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.